Hello beautiful souls, welcome back to day 6 of my video series entitled Every Time a Bell Rings, an Angel Gets His or Her Wings. So before I light the candles for another evening of storytelling, let me tell you about today. So today we had beautiful snowfall in the morning. So as I was driving into work, everything was very peaceful, very quiet, lighter than usual traffic as well. So even though it was a slow drive, but everything looked like a beautiful winter wonderland. The snow was sitting on every branch, outlining, highlighting all the shapes. So it was really beautiful. And then a lot happened that I don't want to go into detail about, but it really feels like the ending of karmic cycles, which is what everyone, a lot of light workers are talking about. So yeah, letting go of fear energy, I am very aware of that. I think having to do with the past, it's just being brought up to be released, consciously released, being aware of it. And if you're being triggered, just being aware that you're being triggered is already half the battle won, right? So yeah, pretty intense. And then I came home and noticed a post by Aloha Pink Bella, whom I love very much, one of the readers that I watch. The Schumann resonance was at 158, and I was like, what? That's unheard of, right? So yeah, no wonder. So I wonder, how was your day? I hope you had a pretty good day. Anyways, the weekend is coming up, so I really feel like just cocooning, going within, meditating. I feel a purge coming on again, just releasing. Also, the full moon is coming up on the 12th, so we're getting pretty close to it, and the full moon is the perfect time to release all that no longer serves us. So that's just as an introduction to this reading. So today's story looks like this. The ornament looks like a Christmas pudding, or what is that? Like a cake. What kind of cake is that? I don't know. Can't think of the name of it. If you know it, you can put it in the comments below. But it's really pretty. With holly, right? Those are hollies. 3 of them. Icing on the cake. All right. So let me light the candles. So we allow these angels to go flying around and round. I think I'm going to leave the lights on as well because I have a hard time reading the print. It's quite small and it's a bit too dark for me if I turn the lights off. So today's story is The Cratchit's Christmas, an excerpt adapted from A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. And you probably all know this story, but here it goes. Ebenezer Scrooge was a mean and miserly man, disliked by all. He worked his clerk, Bob Cratchit, to the bone for no more than a few shillings a week. Only grudgingly did Scrooge allow poor Bob to spend Christmas Day with his family. Christmas? Spat Scrooge. Bah, humbug! On the night before the holiday, Scrooge had a series of eerie dreams in which three spirits showed him the past, present, and future. During the second dream, Scrooge discovered firsthand what Christmas was like for the poor Cratchit family. Scrooge and the ghost passed straight to the home of Bob Cratchit. Cratchit's wife was dressed poorly but bravely in ribbons, which cost little but made a good show. She laid the tablecloth, assisted by Belinda, second of her daughters, also bravely dressed in ribbons. Master Peter, wearing the monstrous shirt his father had conferred on him to honor the day, plunged a fork into the potatoes. And now two smaller Cratchits, a boy and a girl, came tearing in, screaming that outside the baker's they had smelt the goose and known it was their own. Basking in the delicious smells of dinner, these young ones danced about the table and exalted Master Peter to the skies while he blew the fire till the potatoes bubbled up and knocked loudly at the saucepan lid to be let out and peeled. "Wherever is your precious father, then?" asked Mrs. Cratchit. "And your brother, Tiny Tim, and Martha?" "Here's Martha now, mother," cried the two young Cratchits. "Hurrah! There's such a goose, Martha." "Why, bless your heart alive, my dear, how late you are," said Mrs. Cratchit, kissing Martha and taking off her shawl and bonnet. "We'd a great deal of work to finish up last night," replied the girl, "and had to clear away this morning." "Well, never mind, so long as you are here," said Mrs. Cratchit. "Sit ye down before the fire, my dear, and get warm, Lord bless ye." "There's father coming," cried the two young Cratchits. In came Bob, with at least 3 feet of scarf and his threadbare clothes darned up and brushed to look seasonable. Tiny Tim sat upon his shoulders. Alas for Tiny Tim! He bore a little crutch, and his limbs were supported by an iron frame. Martha ran into her father's arms while the two young Cratchits hustled Tiny Tim and bore him off into the wash-house, that he might hear the pudding singing in the copper. "How did little Tim behave in church?" asked Mrs. Cratchit. "As good as gold," said Bob. "Somehow he gets thoughtful, sitting by himself so much, and thinks the strangest things. He told me, coming home, that he hoped people saw him in the church because he was a cripple, and it might be pleasant to them to remember on Christmas Day how lucky they were and who it was that made the lame beggars walk and blind men see." Bob's voice trembled when he said that Tiny Tim was growing stronger. Tiny Tim's active little crutch was heard upon the floor, and back he came to his stool beside the fire. And while Bob stirred some hot mixture in a jug round and round, and put it on the hob to simmer, Master Peter and the two young Cratchits went to fetch the goose, with which they returned in high procession. Mrs. Cratchit made the gravy hissing hot. Master Peter mashed the potatoes with incredible vigor. Miss Belinda sweetened up the applesauce. Martha dusted the hot plates. Bob took Tiny Tim beside him at the table. The two young Cratchits set chairs for everybody and crammed spoons into their mouths, lest they should shriek for goose before their turn came to be helped. At last the dishes were set and grace was said. It was succeeded by a breathless pause as Mrs. Cratchit prepared to plunge her knife into the goose's breast. When she did, and when the long-expected gush of stuffing issued forth, one murmur of delight arose. Even Tiny Tim beat on the table with the handle of his knife and feebly cried, "Hurrah!" There never was such a goose. The family admired its tenderness, flavor, and size. Eked out by applesauce and mashed potatoes, it was a sufficient dinner for the whole family. Everyone had enough, and soon the youngest, in particular, were steeped to the eyebrows in sage and onion. As Miss Belinda changed the plates, Mrs. Cratchit left the room alone to take the pudding up and bring it in. Suppose it should not be done enough? Suppose it should break when she turned it out of its pot? Hello! A great deal of steam. The pudding was out of the copper. A smell like an eating house and the pastry cooks next door to each other. That was the pudding. Soon enough, Mrs. Cratchit, who was smiling proudly, entered with the pudding. It looked like a speckled cannonball, so hard and firm, and blazed in ignited brandy with Christmas holly stuck into the top. "Oh, what a wonderful pudding!" Bob Cratchit said. Mrs. Cratchit confessed she'd had her doubts about the quantity of flour. Everybody had something to say about it, but nobody said or thought it was at all a small pudding for a large family. At last the dinner was done, the cloth was cleared, the hearth swept, and the fire made up. The compound in the jug was tasted and considered perfect. Apples and oranges were put upon the table, and a shovelful of chestnuts on the fire. Oh, these angels did not turn at all. Then all the Cratchit family drew round the hearth, and at Bob's elbow stood the family display of glass, 2 tumblers and a custard cup without a handle. However, these held the hot stuff from the jug as well as any gold goblets would have done, and Bob served it out with beaming looks as the chestnuts on the fire spluttered and crackled noisily. Then Bob proposed a toast to Mr. Scrooge, the founder of the feast. "Mr. Scrooge is an odious, stingy, hard, unfeeling man," cried Mrs. Cratchit, "and nobody knows it better than you do." "Still, it's Christmas," said Bob. "A Merry Christmas to us all, my dears. God bless us all." And the family echoed him. "God bless us, everyone," said Tiny Tim, the last of all. Continuing his travels with the spirits, Scrooge soon saw how terrible a man he had become. Even the poor and lame were loving and happy, yet he had never been. At last he told the final spirit, "I am not the man I was. I will honor Christmas in my heart and try to keep it all the year." And so he did. He gave Bob a promised raise in salary, vowed to help the struggling Cratchit family, and sent them a fine fat turkey for a very merry Christmas. The end. Okay, beautiful souls, I hope you liked that story. I know the angels carousel was not turning today. Let me give it a little spin. There they go. So pretty. All right. A good night to you all. Sweet dreams. Beautiful dreams. And all is well. All shall be well. In divine timing. Wow, look at the carousel. So magical. All right, have a beautiful night. Till tomorrow. Namaste.